welcome to another episode of Our Point of View Talk Show. We are so glad you were able to join us this evening. We're going to go ahead and jump in and introduce our hosts for this evening. First, we have Captain Jackson. How are you, Captain?
I'm doing good. Good to be in the house.
Good. And another third of the Jackson party is Miss Lynette Jackson. How are you, Lynette?
Hello, how are you?
Good. It's good to see you. And we have our special guest again. I love it when she's on, all the way from Washington, D.C., Nurse Meedy Bartinelli. Yay!
Good evening, ladies, and Captain Jackson.
How are you? How are you doing, Miss Meedy?
I am doing well. Jacqueline had me on the show a couple times now, specifically talking about my early on about my journey as a nurse working during this pandemic. And then subsequently I got COVID, had to live through that quarantine process. And then we've been talking about the recovery. And I'm pleased to say that I think I'm about 99.999% recovered. I have been able to decrease my blood pressure medication that I was on after having dealing with hypertension, which I didn't have before COVID. And I'm just a little tired. I still have a little bit of COVID fatigue. I find myself sometimes around about 2 or 3 o'clock wanting to take a nap. But as long as I'm moving, I'm okay. And other than that, things are going well. As you alluded to, I'm here in the nation's capital. And so living and working in Washington, D.C. at one of our major healthcare facilities, and pleased to also announce, full disclosure, I am not a spokesperson for the organization. If you know me and know where I work and where I get to pay my bills from, but I do know that our numbers are below 20 and our very, very large hospital organization from which I work. So that is a very, very positive number to report. So things are on the uptrend. That's or the awesome. Downtrend, which is an upward thing for us.
Right. Right. Well, as you all may know, we are talking about the coronavirus and the vaccine update, as we try to do at least once a month with both Meedy Bartinelli and Dr. K. So the last time we had it, Meedy wasn't available. Dr. K was here. And now this week, Dr. K is not available and Miss Meedy is. We're so glad to have you. You guys are full of knowledge. You know so much. That's why I enjoy bringing you all on the show, so we can get answers to our questions, and you guys are so transparent with us, and we really appreciate that. So with that being said, we're going to jump right in and we're going to ask you some questions.
Absolutely.
But the first question I want to ask basically is, are people starting to forget about the virus since the states are starting to open?
I think the easy answer to that, Jacqueline, unfortunately, is I don't think they forgot about it. I think they just have COVID fatigue. I think people are just kind of over it. They know it's still there, but it's one of those things that now, since the narrative has changed, you only have about 1 or 2 minutes of it on the newscast versus that's all we heard, 24/7. And now that the death numbers have significantly decreased, which is a positive, I think people are just kind of, it's just a thing now. But it is still active. Unfortunately, it's still present. I think our country is doing significantly better. And I just hope and pray that as these variants that are still kind of looming out there, as people continue to get vaccinated, I think that we're in a much better place. But I don't think we forgot about it. I think we're just kind of over it. I think it's called pandemic fatigue.
Yeah. Well, joining us now, we have State Representative Derrick Jackson from District 64, who just put in his nomination for running for the Lieutenant Governor for the state of Georgia. So glad you can join us this evening, because I know you have a very hectic schedule.
Jack.
I know. I see we got our good friend Meedy on with us. I mean, she is like our resident expert when it comes down to COVID. We follow her journey the last 13, 14 months. So, but it's great to be with you all this evening.
I think I'm going to move to Georgia so I can vote.
Come on.
Please do. We need all we can get.
Absolutely.
Well, Derrick, we are talking about the update. We're getting updates from Ms. Meedy about the coronavirus and the vaccination. So we're just basically asking her questions about it. But I have my next question for you is, after the required dose, how long until it takes effect and provides protection? and who is it actually protecting?
Great question. Within 2 weeks, so if you got your second dose of your vaccine, for example, of Pfizer or Moderna today, you can consider yourself fully covered, if you will, within 14 days, within 2 weeks of that. And I want to make sure that we're clear that the fully covered mean that you have the best efficacy of that vaccination. People still need to understand the vaccine does not mean you are 100% immune from getting the coronavirus. 95% does not equal 100. So there's always that small percentage. What it does do, again, is it reduces hospitalizations and it reduces deaths. As you followed me, I think I was on probably, a week after I got my first dose, and I was reporting how I felt and everything because healthcare providers were the first ones to be able to get it back in December. And then I tested positive on January 4th. I tested on the 4th, my results came back on the 5th, and then I was quarantined obviously that evening, and then was talking to you guys from a hotel room during an insurrection, which occurred on January 6th. And so clearly I was within that window. However, my symptoms, albeit I had them, they were not as severe that caused me to require to be hospitalized, nor did it require me to have supplemental oxygen, because obviously COVID impacts significantly your respiratory system. So very long answer, but the point is within 2 weeks, and I just want to always make sure people, and thank you for allowing me to share on your platform, Jackie, that people understand that it does not mean that you're 100% immune. It just means that you should not require hospitalization, and hopefully it will reduce your possibility of dying from this virus.
I mean, you only had one vaccination before you actually contracted the virus. So being that you only had the one, it's still able to protect you the way it did. It's,
Correct.
So with that being said, will people just feel like, okay, well, I'm only going to take one. I don't need to have the second dose?
No, to be very honest, Jacqueline, Jacqueline, I want to be clear. I think that the average person, if you are going to get vaccinated, I think they are now fully committed and understanding to what it means and what it does and how it helps to help you. The second part of your question was who does it help? Obviously, it helps you, me, i.e. you, who all of us, I hope, who have received the vaccine, but then you're also protecting others that are around you. You're protecting those that have immune compromised systems. You're protecting grandma. You're protecting, the cousin who has lupus, or the family member who has asthma, or somebody who has, cancer and their immune system is not strong enough to fight off other things. For example, I'm a person who I rarely ever get the flu, but I typically get a really bad cold at least just once a year. But I'm not requiring, I'm not out for a whole week, where I know other people who might get, the cold or flu, and it takes them about 2 weeks to kind of recover from those symptoms. And so everyone is different. And so I think it's important for people to understand that we all heard the term herd immunity. We're all a part of the herd. We're all in a community, regardless of whether you like it or not, unless you are literally staying at home, completely isolating yourself from the world. You are a part of the herd, whether you're in the middle of the herd or on the outskirts of the herd. You're also part of the community. And so we have to make sure that on our comings and goings, not only are you protecting yourself, but you're also protecting the people around you, and then vice versa.
And we still must practice the social distancing, wearing the mask, and washing of the hands.
And I think that's more so key to do that when you're around individuals who you don't know, and you can't really validate that they've been vaccinated. For example, I'm hoping to, hopefully this summer before it's over, I hope to get to Representative Jackson's house and get to see him and hang out. I trust that he's been vaccinated. I trust that his family has. So if I'm there and if it's just, 10 or 12 of us, then it's okay to not necessarily have to have on your mask or to have to quote unquote socially distance, because we've all been immunized by having the vaccination. So that's a plus. The problem with this is that when you start talking about opening up schools and churches and other public venues, how do you really verify that it's the truth, right? How do you verify that 200 people who just showed up all have received their vaccine and they've all been with post, those 2 weeks where they need to have the vaccine to take effect? How are you going to know that? And so that's where the challenge is. And so until we consistently see vaccinations, I looked before we got on, obviously doing my homework, is that at least right now for Americans, 64%, the specific number is 63.9. So 64% of Americans have received at least one dose or their first dose of their vaccine, i.e. J&J, Johnson & Johnson, which is a 1 dose, or Pfizer, Moderna, which is 2. My son, for example, he just received his second dose yesterday or Monday. And so because of that, he's not fully immunized for another week and a half. So if I'm going to go see Captain Jackson and Jackson, if I travel down to Georgia, Anthony's not fully vaccinated until another week and a half. So I wouldn't want to go and bring him into their home until now my family is completely vaccinated. Now we can have our mask off and hang out and quote unquote be normal again.
Okay.
You know, Midi, one of the things, and I think you're raising some excellent points here to Jacqueline's question, but just today, as I was campaigning for Lieutenant Governor, I posed a question to the group, life after, coronavirus, right? And what I meant by that was, we didn't start really talking about pre-existing condition to the Affordable Care Act, right? That was the big topic, pre-existing conditions. Because the Affordable Care Act addressed pre-existing conditions. Now you got the coronavirus. Those who have pre-existing condition is one thing, but now life after coronavirus, millions and millions of those who contracted the coronavirus is now falls into that category of pre-existing conditions, right? So there's this long-term impact too. And so if you could share with our point of view audience about, why some folks will still, wear the mask, be socially distanced, be careful which venues they go to. And the reason being because a third of our population already stated that they're not going to get vaccinated. They don't believe in the science. They continue to run with that same thought of mind, if you will. I'm trying to be politically correct and nice, right? And so because a third of our population is not going to get vaccinated, we really technically don't reach herd immunity, to your eloquent point. And so that pre-existing condition for those millions of Americans who, contracted the coronavirus, they fall into that category. And so now we need to make sure that our healthcare system has the capability and the capacity to meet the needs of now this larger group of pre-existing condition. We're no longer just talking about sickle cell and lupus. Now we got to talk about the coronavirus, those who've been contracted with the coronavirus. They now fall in that pre-existing condition.
Excellent point. And I'm one of them now, right? And here's the interesting fact I've always been able to share. Again, thank you, Jacqueline, for allowing me to kind of share the story. Interestingly enough, about 2 or 3 weeks when I got home out of quarantine, I received this information about a healthcare claim. And I'm like, I was never hospitalized. So, I'm thinking somebody must have got a hold of my social security number or something happened. Well, unbeknownst to me, my hospital filed a claim on my behalf for workman's compensation because of the COVID-19 virus, because of me assumedly contracting it from working at a hospital. Very interesting to your point, Representative Jackson, that I don't know what's going to happen, or prayerfully nothing, but I don't know what lingering effects I may end up having. Again, prayerfully none. I keep on emphasizing that, a year from now, 5 years from now, or 10 years from now, right? I don't know. And so to your point, you made an excellent question that you were posing in the forum upon which you were in, because we literally don't know. And so I'm not sure how well our healthcare, yea, I say sick care system is going to be able to manage this as we continue to figure out what these lingering effects will be of 33,224,075, might I add. Again, 33,224,075 people, according to the CDC as of this afternoon at 4 p.m., are American citizens who contracted COVID. So I'm sure people like you and others that are in legislative bodies that are making rules and regulations and policies to govern us will have to assumedly address and make sure that you're not going to deny meaty health care, or you're not going to deny, as I continue to age, as we all do, my life insurance policy because, oh, she has COVID. Because as you all know, all of those things are impacted by pre-existing conditions. And so, yes, I now have a pre-existing condition, which I never had of anything before, which how was I going to control that? I'm a healthcare worker, and think about, the people, God bless them. I know you are a military servant, Representative Jackson, think about Agent Orange and all the things that people dealt with back during Vietnam War and other things. And so they have these pre-existing conditions. And so prayerfully and gratefully for you all tend to be more covered through the Veterans Administration, but the regular Joe citizen, I don't have access to go to the VA, right? And so I think it's important that you all have that conversation. And I'm glad that you brought that up. And I'm hoping that not just in your legislation down in the state of Georgia, but I hope others are having that conversation, because again, we have no idea of what this is I don't know what this fatigue that I feel, even though I feel fine, I'm still exercising, I'm working out, my blood pressure is much better, but I do still definitely feel fatigue even after I go to bed the other night. I went to bed around 9:15, slept really well, got up at 5:30, but then I'm tired around 10 a.m. Interesting. But then I was able to force through it. So I don't know. So great point. And I'm glad you brought that up. And I hope we continue to have a discussion, but I don't have an answer, but I do think, yes, pre-existing conditions, health insurance, life insurance, what does that look like? And again, what is our sick care system going to do about it? Yeah. I'll just go to Lynette and then hopefully she'll take care of me.
Hey, come on down here. We'll take care of
you. I'll take care of you. I got you.
Thank you.
So let me ask you, Meaty, how long does the vaccination work last?
Another great question. They're assuming there's some preliminary rumors, and I want to be specifically clear. There has not been any hard science or data that says you are covered for example, if you get the pneumonia shot, depending upon which one, they say you're covered for 5 years and 10 years, and then every 10 years you get a new pneumonia vaccine. We still don't know. What we're thinking is about maybe 2 to 3 years. We'll see, but there's no hardcore data out there because we're only 1 year out since we obviously started this vaccine. I think the first people who started taking during the trial was about April-ish of last year, because remember, COVID kind of really hit America back in February. So around March or April is when we started to have those trials. And then we had Operation Warp Speed. What we do know, I think it's been a kind of a common conversation. Dr. K and I we chatted prior, and also meeting with some other individuals that I know, other infectious disease physicians that I personally work with, say that more than likely we absolutely will need to get a booster shot. That they're pretty much 85 to 95% promising that we will need to get some type of a booster shot. We just don't know. The scientists are still trying to figure out exactly what that time frame will be. No different than the flu vaccine. Here's one of the main reasons why I can say that is they probably will end up making some alteration to the vaccine, because we still have these variants that we have already identified that are out there. And so as we continue to still have, as Representative Jackson said, that few part of our society that have not gotten vaccinated, we're going to still produce variants. That's what our body does. So we still have the B117, which was a UK variant, the B1351, which is a South African variant, the P1, which was Brazil, and then the B16172, which is what's in India. And if you all have been following the news, India is being ravaged right now. I mean, they're almost kind of the exact opposite of us. They're like the New York City on steroids. New York was really traumatized by this early last year. They said India, thousands and thousands of people are dying every day. Now, and so again, so people travel, things happen, how if somebody comes to the US, no different than we had those 1 or 2 cases over in the state of Washington. And then it kind of trickled to New York, and then it's all over. So as these variants are continued to be developed, we have to make sure that we're doing our due diligence. And I'm sure that they will have to make alterations to the vaccine, just like they do the flu vaccine, because every year we don't get the exact same flu shot. Every year they have to make variations to that to meet the different types of strains of flu that we have here in the US.
Now, Midi, you mentioned flu. I notice, and again, for our audience, I'm no doctor, I'm no healthcare practitioner like Midi, I'm no epidemiologist, but I know how to read, and I'm well learned. And I noticed that this past flu season, it was significantly lower than normal.
Yeah.
And so is that because the coronavirus vaccine and maybe the flu vaccine was closely aligned? I don't know the medical term, but it seemed like it was along the same strand. And those of us, because I've been fully vaccinated since March, so those of us who started getting our shots back in February, and then my second shot in March, but the flu season sort of climax in February, if I'm not mistaken. And so when you start thinking about, this whole warp speed, to your previous point, I noticed that the number of flu cases was significantly lower than normal.
I think the reason for that, though, Representative Jackson, is probably not probably. I can pretty much bet my nursing license. It's because we were socially distanced, right? All of a sudden now we're washing our hands, which is what we should have done before anyway, and we're wearing masks. So in the prevention of the coronavirus, you are also now able to prevent these other things that are also airborne and droplet transmitted. And so because of that, I think that's why we saw a significant decrease. And keep in mind, we were still kind of pseudo lockdown, if you will, during November, December, January, right? We were still pretty much, things weren't open. Restaurants still didn't have anybody allowing them to go in, with the exception of, carry out, or maybe they only if they had an outdoor seating area. So there were no indoor dining, nothing of that sort. There weren't bars open, during some of the states, Georgia.
We're all the way open.
But the majority of the other more conservatively / liberal states that were abiding by CD rules and regulations really did not have wide open seating any longer. So I think that was why contributed to our ability to kind of contain the flu this year, because to your point, 20 to 35,000 people die a year from the flu. We don't talk about it because it's something that just happens, no different than we only talk about heart disease during February, but women are dying. As we've been on for 29 minutes, probably 100 women have just died within the time that we've been on from heart disease. So just think about that. So there's so many things that are always happening. Again, that's why having forums like this, people like yourself, Representative Jackson, Captain Jackson, Jacqueline, and Lynette, us being able to talk and to share our own experiences and to communicate this to our communities is so important. And I always as Jacqueline knows, I'd like to always shift to not just COVID, but just our overall health in general, and using COVID-19 and this pandemic to highlight the importance of Black health and wellness, and the importance of, I know Jacqueline and I follow each other. I think we all do follow each other on social media. And I was just saying that what I've really learned more so than anything ever in my life, and these 45 years I've been on this world and this earth, is the messenger is just as important as the message. The person who is sharing the message to the people is just as important as the message you're trying to convey. And we saw that during this pandemic.
One of the things, and I don't know if anybody was about to speak, one of the things that I found is kind of disturbing now to me is we're not talking about how many lives that are being lost daily now. At first it was on CNN and they were just, and it was skyrocketing. I get it. There's still hundreds of people that are dying every single day. Yep. And I really think that is disturbing, because we kind of put that by the wayside. I don't know why, but even when you're talking about the flu, not talking about how many people are passing because of the flu, but because of this virus, at one time there were thousands dying daily, and they are still dying. And it's not being reported or talked about as much as anything else has been lately. I mean, they don't even talk about it at all.
You know, we have to control the narrative, though. We have to start controlling the narrative. And that was the other bigger thing that I've learned. Not just because I'm a nurse, but what I really learned just in life in general. You got to speak your own narrative. You got to put those things out before somebody else says it about you. You got to continue to, if that's important to you, and that speaks to what's important, right? So now that it's not 20,000 people dying a day, but it's still 5,000 people a day dying from
One too many.
It's still too many people.
One too many.
It's 5, 6, 7,000 people from something that, now granted, heart disease, can we do something? Yes, but you can't make people exercise overnight. I get all that, but COVID is something that we absolutely can stop. This is absolutely preventable. This is something that you can prevent, but we're not talking about it. So your point is like, I mean, blast. Why aren't we talking about it? Why is it really
every so often I'll see something go across the news in Georgia? We're like, I think in State Representative Jackson, please, if I'm right, I think, or if Mr. Jackson, I think it says like 3.6% or something. It'll just go across really, really quick, and that's it. But that's somebody's life, being taken, and it's still happening. So, and they're not talking about it much. And I think that that's another reason why, and I don't want to say use it as a scare tactic, but show them the reality of what COVID is still doing to people. It would help a lot, but that's not happening. If you notice, it's not happening. Exactly. We don't have, right now, they're talking about giving away Braves tickets just to get the shot. That just blows my mind, okay.
Well, the point that you're raising is so apropos, because the coronavirus from the beginning should never have been politicized.
No.
Right? Not. It should have been a healthcare subject matter expert like Meady or epidemiologists, those who are in the healthcare field, saying, here is a public health situation.
Crisis.
This is what we need to do, right? I mean, this is no different. And again, my Republican friends hate when I do this comparison, but Barack Obama had 3, right? 3, not 1, not 2, 3. And he put a team of 27 epidemiologists together. They created a 69-page playbook, passed that on to the next administration. And that administration discarded the playbook, fired the 27 epidemiologists, and the rest is history, right? And there's a difference, right? It should never been politicized.
No.
President Obama never politicized. He said, we got the Zika virus, right? That's the right thing to do. Alert the public. You're the president of the United States. We have a Zika virus, and I like to bring on Dr. Fauci and step aside, right? We got H1N1, Zika virus, Ebola. I mean, right? I mean, he had 3 of them. And he allowed for Dr. Fauci and the other doctors and subject matter experts. They controlled the show. It was none of this, it's just going to blow over. It's going to get hot. It's going to take a couple of days. Drink some bleach, Clorox bleach. It was none of that. It was none of that, right? Our poison control hotline in Georgia went through the roof.
Mm-hmm.
CDC was like, what is going on? Why are people calling to talk about how much did he said to drink? If the coronavirus doesn't kill you, that Clorox will.
Yes. And then they talk about what, fish food or fish something with the golden. Right. It was just, it's been ridiculous. It's been ridiculous.
The wearing of the mask should never have been politicized.
No.
You're not weak because you're wearing a mask. No, I love you. I'm being a good neighbor. I'm being a good Samaritan. I'm wearing a mask to protect me. It goes back to what Meady just said a few minutes ago, right? This is a responsibility for us all to partake. Right? Because these viruses I took a little biology when I was in high school. I took a little chemistry. I got a little science in my head. These viruses need a host.
Yeah.
And when it's that simple, and they transfer to transfer. And so that's why I'm happy. I know Media, your son is 15, but when they started talking about now let's vaccinate 12 and up,
Yeah.
right? And we still got some way to go because I got a little grandson, and man, he got the this is the first time I heard of it. Media, it's called the hand
and mouth foot disease.
Yes.
Yep.
Let me tell you something. My grandson.
Go to webmd.com. I'm like, what is this hand mouth? What?
My grandson had the same thing. My grandson had the same exact thing, but guess what he got it from? When you let a dog lick you in the mouth, you can get it. If you let a dog, you have to let a dog and you playing and you let them lick. That's what a doctor told me, that you can possibly get it from that. And he did it once.
Yeah, because what you don't realize is that babies, young kids, they touch their hands, everything in their mouth. And then they might touch their feet, and you don't have on, you don't have on shoes. And obviously, no shade to any of my pet lovers out there, but you have to be conscientious, because if the dog is walking outside, they're still walking on the dirt. So it's not really that your dog per se is dirty, but if your dog then comes in and you let them jump on you and you might touch their paw, well, you don't know what they stepped in outside, which could be other stool or, whatever. And then you rub your nose or your mouth. That's how you get a hand, mouth, and foot disease. And if you think about it, Representative Jackson, even when my son was in school, in daycare, typically when one kid got sick, they all got sick. And that's of herd immunity, is that now once they all started sharing, I remember walking in and seeing my son, another kid literally have one of those little toys, chewing on it, which is what they do when you're, a baby. And then my son's crawling over to it. And I was like, no. There he took the same toy. It was already like, okay, well, they're all in the same little class. So at this point, that's how you develop the herd immunity. And so now all these kids have each other's germs. And so after he had one bad cold, he literally was never sick again, like literally never sick, because all these, the same 10 or 11 kids were in the same little, daycare class together. So yes, hand, foot, and mouth disease is something that comes from, it's difficult for children, obviously, to be socially distant and to wash your hands every second and do those things. But I think the bigger story here is just what you said, politicizing public health, not advertising for him, but I'm reading this great book, a leadership book, The Speed of Trust. And I think most things in life, it has some level of trust, whether you want to accept it or not. When you're driving today, you're trusting that that other person is going to stop at the stop sign. Right. When you go to a restaurant tonight, you are trusting that the chef has washed his or her hand when they came out of the bathroom, and now they're touching and preparing your food. You're trusting that the teacher, when you drop your kid off at school, to not be, racist or sexist or whatever it is. I'm a nurse. People don't know me. When you come into the hospital, you trust what I have in that syringe is what I'm telling you. You don't know me. So we all have a certain level of trust, not just, the love trust or a friend or a family member. Things move at the speed of trust. And so that's why having the messenger, like you said, Representative Jackson, having Barack Obama, who's an attorney, say, hey, I didn't go to medical school. I'm not a biologist. I'm not an epidemiologist, but I know this is bad. I have a responsibility. So here's a subject matter expert that's going to tell us the best way forward. Great. I've never fought a fire. So if I'm not going to run into a burning building and open up a window, I do know that if you open up windows, you let more oxygen in, and then that's how combustion happens, because I too had a little bit of science. But if it's a real burning building, I'm going to call Representative Captain Jackson, because he knows what to do. That's what he does professionally. There's a science behind fighting fires, right? And so again, you have to have this blind trust. And so until our society starts looking at the root of why we are in predicaments that we're in, why we have these health crises, because this really could have been over months ago had we done what we were supposed to do, or at least it could have been better contained. Let me reframe that. It could have been better contained had we done what we should have done, months ago, and not had Clorox statements, and not had statements like, oh, just go out in the sun with UV rays, and not have, all of a sudden, Dr. Fauci isn't present and we don't know what to do. And so one person says mask, the other person doesn't. Why DC is mandating mask, but Atlanta isn't, right? Why is that? And so I think until we collectively as a community of people, of citizens, go back to this, the basis of any relationship is trust, whether you want to accept it or not, because you're trusting the person who built the chair that it's going to work before you sit your behind in the chair. So I think this thing has just really opened up so many other opportunities for us to have other conversations.
So Midi, let me ask you, what and I understand this will probably be subjective, but what has happened over the years? Because children, adults getting licked in the mouth by a dog, it is nasty, it's gross, but it's been happening for a long time. I remember going to the doctor's office with that, going to see the doctor and him having that tongue depressor, putting it in your mouth, all that coming out your mouth, going in his or her mouth. I mean, what over the years has happened to where things have gotten worse? I mean, I'm sure Jackie, Lynette, maybe you, maybe some others still have that inoculation mark on our arms, respectively. And we're not having to, thankfully, we're not having to get that over and over again. I think that, you may have gotten it once, obviously you got it once, may have gotten it twice, but that's it. Hadn't seen that thing in eons. Is it the strength of these ailments and these diseases and these sicknesses has gotten worse to the point to where more shots are required, constant monitoring is required, or have we as a people become really, really careless in terms of how we interact with one another? I mean, I get the whole loving.
I would say it's a little bit of all of that, to be very honest. First things first, the human body is very, very resilient. There are right now, all 5 of us have been exposed to something today that our body is fighting off that we don't even know. And that's the beauty of the human body.
Right.
Typically, whenever you, there's a thing that's called the white blood cell count. And so if you have a cold, I promise you, if you went to your doctor that day and just had them draw your blood, that we call it WBCs, normal is 5 to 10, yours is probably on the higher end, because that's your body automatically fighting off. As Representative Jackson said, if you guys remember back when we were in high school and we learned about the cells and the macrophages and all those things, your body's constantly fighting off stuff. So I do think that generally speaking, humans are continually evolving, no different than the viruses that we are coming up are evolving. And so as an organism evolves and its host gets stronger to defend it, well, guess what? Then the viruses too then often find other ways to continue to attack us and get stronger and do different things. Number 2, we cannot negate the fact that what we are doing to our environment. I will, in full disclosure, I hope I am not offending anyone that is watching. I'm not a tree hugger, but I am a person who respects our environment. I'm a person who recycles. I'm a person who does my best to get the glass that can be recycled versus the plastic. I'm the person who watches all the Nat Geo stuff to understand. I'm the person that tells my son, turn off the lights if you're wasting energy. Am I necessarily an ecologist? I wouldn't consider myself that, but I'm definitely aware. When you have things that are happening where you are cutting down major greenery, where you're cutting down forests, all of those animals and different things are coming to different places. When you talk about what's that fish that kind of walks on water, I can't remember, that comes from Asia, and we had a few of them here. It'll come to me in a second, but there's a fish that's actually very detrimental. So if you put it into other fresh water, oh my goodness, I'm sure somebody, I know you guys know what I'm talking about. Because it was on the news, but
I know exactly what you're talking about.
but you know what I'm talking about, right? I can't think of the name of the fish, but that fish is something that is specifically germained over somewhere in Asia. Well, some crazy person brings it here and puts it, for example, in a fresh pond or something. Well, that fish is now going to pretty much reproduce and like kill all the other fish. I live here in the DMV. I live in DC proper, but in the DMV, we're very well known in Maryland for crabs. So blue crabs. Well, what's happening is that all the runoff that we have from when the winter time comes, and so all that extra salt and the chemicals that run off into the Chesapeake Bay. So you're now starting to see blue crabs not being as big as they normally were, and or those crabs being overfished, and or these crabs that are both male and female because of just what we're doing into the water, right? So we as humans are doing things that are creating things to the food and the resources that we eat that then and also impact our bodies. My family, I think you all know, I'm pretty much a Georgia girl transplanted to Pennsylvania, but I grew up there. And so I had all of my grandparents lived well into their late 80s and 90s, and they ate pork. They ate fried food. They did all this stuff, but the majority of what they ate was all fresh, right? It was stuff that was, in their own farm, or the pigs that they ate, or the cows that we ate was stuff that my grandparents had actually farmed themselves. So there were no injecting of chemicals into these animals. And moreover, they also were exercising. And so when you talk about all these other things that are coming and impacting our health and our wellness, it's very multifactorial. And I think it's because of it, there's no one thing. It's kind of like a Venn diagram, and all these little things are intersecting, Captain. And I think that's what we're seeing. So when you talk about these other viruses and why we have to get inoculated with these different types of things every year, it's because of all those different things. Like what's happening? Why did somebody get bit by a bat that now created this coronavirus, right? Or if that's where it came from, like who's living so close to bat caves that they are now, once you get bit by a bat, now this is now the whole world is impacted by a pandemic because of just one person getting infected, if that's the case, right? Because we're still trying to figure out, was this man-made from Wuhan? Was all the conspiracy theories that are out there? But seemingly it is something that has come from, bats. So how do we get it? Did the bat now bite a cow and then we now ate the cow and then that's how it got infected? We don't know. So I think you answered your question in your question, that it's all of those things that are now impacting why we are with our health.
Yeah. Okay. I know we only got about 20 minutes left in the show. I want to raise this sensitive topic real quick, if you don't mind, Jacqueline.
I'm here for it.
And that is, we have some friends and family members who refuse to get vaccinated. And it's going to come to a point, Meaty, going back to what you said about maybe 20 minutes ago, who you will invite to your house, right? I mean, Thanksgiving's going to be right around the corner before you know it. There are birthday celebrations, right? Weddings, right? And you look and some family members and some friends, made it public. I don't believe in it, right? Conspiracy theorists and all that kind of stuff. And then you start putting your list together, and then when you have an event, they're gonna say, Meaty, you didn't invite us. Why didn't you invite us? We would love to come to your son, when he graduates from high school. You didn't invite us. And you're gonna say, because you're not vaccinated. I can't risk, right? I'm in this pre-existing condition, or I still have, some elderly, parents, right? What do we do when your family member and your friends say, I'm not gonna get vaccinated? And it's well within their right. This is a democracy. Now, for children, it's a different story, because we'll tell you, if you want your child to go to school, you got to get vaccinated. We would need to see your shot record, right? We got a 17-year-old that plays volleyball. We need to see your shot record. This is not a coronavirus thing. This is like part of it's been in public policy for a long time that if your child goes to a public school, that you got to show a shot record. But I'm just curious, and I would love to hear you all's perspective, because that came up today. They were like, Representative Jackson, if you knew some of your constituents, they're not vaccinated, and they asked you to come to a particular event, would you decline? And I thought about that. I'm like, I probably would decline.
Yeah.
Right? Because I have a responsibility, not just to those constituents who are not vaccinated, but even to the constituents who are vaccinated, right? Now, again, it's a choice. And so if I exercise my choice to decline your invitation or not invite you to the Thanksgiving dinner, it's my prerogative. I'm just curious. This is a sensitive topic.
Yeah, you're right. I could, at any given time, I'm vaccinated, but I could get COVID. Still, there's still a chance, and I won't have any type of symptoms or anything, but I still can give it to someone who doesn't have it. And again, they can be a part of that number of people, even though it's getting smaller, but still there that are passing or get sick or hospitalized. So I totally agree and wanting to understand that part of it too, as to what you would do. Me personally, I probably would address it, and I probably wouldn't go either, but just for the sake of it. But yes.
Jack, so I'm gonna say that to answer that question, what do? You still love, first off, you still love them and you still respect them, because everybody's not getting a shot.
No, they're not.
And so if they don't know, they should know that if they're not vaccinated, then they need to take the extra precautions. So if they need to double mask, they got to double mask. They got to make the 6 feet, 10 feet. They got to do what they got to do. If they don't get invited to the wedding or they don't get invited to the dinner, the person on the other end, has to just understand what your position is. But someone who's decided not to get vaccinated and has decided to go the holistic method and just totally flip-flop their diet, their eating habits, their exposure to people, you can't hate on them.
No.
Because again, and that's why the whole shot shaming thing is really important. You really can't do that, because not just for any conspiracy theory per se, but just because of their particular way of life.
Personal preference.
They don't do shots. I had a firefighter, who's a Muslim, just got hired, and he called me because he was wanting to know, could he get a religious exemption prior to getting hired at the doctor, because he is 21 and has never received any sort of shot, period. Now that's a religious, spiritual, theological thing going on. That's not just necessarily being a conspiracy theorist. And he is a Muslim, not under the following under the Honorable Elijah Muhammad, but he's I can't remember the other part of the Muslim belief, but he's under that. So that's just a religious thing that's been practiced in his family forever, so for a long time. So I think it's a very delicate situation, but people have to respect the fact that you've been vaccinated and you've chosen to invite certain or specific people because of your belief around that. But at the same time, I believe you have to understand their point, and then they have to understand why perhaps they weren't invited, or perhaps they weren't included in that function for the very reasons that you mentioned. Hey, I'm protecting you, I'm protecting myself, protecting my family. And so we don't want to inadvertently or unintentionally or intentionally rather expose you, because you can be asymptomatic and be walking around with this thing, probably even after having gotten a shot. Or if there's a parent that's like, hey, this thing is still new, it's still under emergency use authorization, they can't even tell me what this is going to look like for my child moving forward. Is it going to cause sterility issues? Is it going to cause unintended aborted pregnancies in our young women. It's a lot to unpack. It's a lot to unravel because it's still new.
I have a question for Derek. Excuse me, Nina, I'm sorry. Do you know which of your constituents are vaccinated completely and are not vaccinated completely? And do they have to tell you whether they are or not?
That's a great question, Jacqueline. So the ones that I know for sure, you know how Meaty shares all the great news and the positive things that she's doing, right, in the healthcare industry. Well, I have some constituents who use social media too to say, I don't believe in this, and Dr. Fauci, don't know what he's talking about, right? I mean, they're just out there. And so I don't know everyone, Jacqueline, but those who have the audacity to put it on social media, I'm like, oh, so when I see you at the grocery store or whatever, right? Because I still wear my mask. And the reason why I still wear my mask is because I got a 22-month-old grandson, right? I have in-laws who are elderly, right? And so, you know, and I guess the other part that I'm coming from is the military. I could not go on certain missions if I didn't get a shot, because they'll tell you, you can't go. You cannot go. And you don't have no right in the military. We tell you that from the get-go. They're like, well, what about my constitution? That's for civilians. In the military, you do what thus say we say you do.
You can't take the
Listen to Uncle Sam.
That's right. But yeah, I don't know all of my constituents who are vaccinated or not, but clearly there are some that will say on their profile, I've been vaccinated, right? Some who are very proud. I got the shot, right? And so although I've been vaccinated since March, I put mine back on my Facebook page on yesterday to remind folks I'm vaccinated, right? But I still wear the mask. I still double up. I still try to maintain my distance. You know, they invited us all to the Braves game, 40,000 people. I'm like, I'm not going. 40,000 people, you all right there? No.
Yeah, because there's no way to confirm or validate those 40,000 people where the 40,000.
Right.
People are actually buying the cards on eBay. So it's like, you know, some people may have actually have their card showing that they're fully vaccinated. Some people are purchasing them. Some people are stealing them. Some people are I mean, so you really don't know. Because I know I have a girlfriend who's going on a cruise in August. And she's saying that the ship is, you know, they're saying that you have to be fully vaccinated to go on the cruise. But the ones who don't go on a cruise get a different color wristband, and they can only go in certain areas. And I'm like, aren't they opening up themselves for a lawsuit? If they're, I mean, it's not like, you know, they're saying you have to wear a mask. You know, if everybody, if they're saying you have to wear a mask, you have to wear a mask. You can't help that. That's, you know, state, local, and government laws. But if they're saying, you know, it's your choice to be vaccinated.
Unfortunately, we gain corporate immunity. So when you go into a restaurant in the state of Georgia, we'll say that I didn't vote for this law. We were outnumbered because I don't believe no organization, no one should be immune of their responsibility, right? If I purchase an automobile and we learned that automobile, there are certain, it was recall, there had some abnormalities of it, and they did not alert the public, right? That manufacturer should be held responsible. Right. Nobody should be have just like you know, the whole things about police immunity, right? So so to answer your question, Jacqueline, it's very simple, and that is that if you go to a cruise ship, that circulation, that air that we breathe is all centralized. So one have been spent 22 years in the Navy on ships. So I don't care if we compartmentalize you on the forward end and I stay on the fantail, that circularization, that right, it's only one system, right? It's not compartmentalized like that. And so just like airplanes, this is the same thing, right? They say, well, we're gonna skip the middle seat, but I'm like, you all know you're 30,000 feet here, you're in this little tube and you're breathing the same air.
Right.
Right. So
well, see, on an airplane, they don't say that it's mandatory that you have, that you're fully vaccinated, but you still have to wear a mask. So why is it that they can say that on a ship, that you have to be fully vaccinated to go on the cruise?
Probably because of the time frame and the likelihood of the cross contamination, because you're on, most cruises are at least 3 to 7 days versus being on an airplane ride for several hours. And so the likelihood of that, and obviously the plane is going to a destination where if you end up having a cruise ship who breaks down like the one did, I remember, I think the toilets or something happened right even prior to the pandemic, and that one ship that was like stranded out there, that's pretty detrimental. But to your earlier question about Representative Jackson about what would I do, I would do the same thing. Again, if I'm going to someone's home, well, let me back up. Have I gone out to a restaurant? Yes. Have I eaten outside? Yes. So I make sure all of the reservations that I have gone to, one, I've only gone with people who have been vaccinated or just my husband who's fully vaccinated. And then two, even when I have gone out, like someone had a birthday party, she intentionally only invited 8 people and all of the 8 people were fully vaccinated and we were at an outdoor setting. And so I think, you, i.e. myself, or you who's listening and watching, you need to make those best decisions for yourself and for your health. What people, again, we forget about these things. I just looked it up again as we were talking with the measles, 20 million people per year, 20 million per year still get the measles throughout the world, not obviously the US because we get immunized. So think about it, 20 million people still get it. And I looked, 140,000 people in the world die a year. Nearly 150,000 people die from the measles. And there is a known remedy, a preventative remedy with the vaccine to prevent measles, but it still happens. Here's one thing, my colleague who works for me, she is from Sierra Leone in Africa, and it was mandated. She could not go until she got all of her shots. So what I really just want to let people know, and this is not to your point, Captain Jackson, about shaming or shot shaming or people who are vaccinated to shame them about COVID. I want everybody to understand that if our government wanted to track us, first and foremost, every single one of us have a cell phone. And so let's just be clear. They know what we're doing. They know what's in our bank account. They know what we're saying about you, let alone where you are. So if they wanted to do something to us, they can. So let's just be clear. Number two, we all have, it's required, to your point, hundreds of us or thousands, millions of us would have already been dead if they wanted to do something, because they could have put it in the flu shot, because we all get flu shots, at least all the healthcare workers would do that. So I'm not here to shame, I'm just trying to put this in context. Why would they kill all of the healthcare workers in our country? So just think about that, regardless of, the white people, Black people, et cetera. As a nurse, I physically, personally have seen them pull from the same vial, give me the shots. I vaccinated personally over 200 people personally, and I get it from the same vial. I've given it to white men, Black men, white women, Black women, Asian women, Asian men. And so there is no, I just want people to not have, again, I talked about that, the trust, the blind trust, that they're not using this as some new theory. And then here in DC on one of the radio shows, Jackie, someone on the other day was talking about nanoparticles. And I was like, brother, please don't spread stuff that is not true. Like, if they wanted to do it, they could have done it. Every year in DC, and Captain Jackson, I'm sure you know, as a firefighter, and Representative Jackson, you know, as a
I'm sorry, thank you so much for joining us.
That was messed up. That was
We'll save the questions for next time. But thank you guys everything we said was our point of view. We'll see you next time.